Greetings, my excellent friend. Welcome to the Heavy Metal History.
Hello, listener. I'm your host, Dustin, and you are listening to Heavy Metal History. This episode of the podcast was with the mastermind behind Rebel Wizard. Now, this episode is actually quite old, I guess, for lack of a better word. It was recorded back in July before my computer died and the podcast went on a bit of a hiatus. Now, I found the files, I got them back, I edited them together, and this is that episode that was recorded. We're obviously talking about his album that already has come out, so if you're listening to this, go check it out. The fucking album is killer, and especially, the fact that it's all done by one guy. It's amazing. He does not have social media anymore, so you cannot find him, you cannot follow him or anything like that. It's very unfortunate, but I appreciate him for taking the time to do this episode when we did do it. It was really fun, I had a good time, and he's a pretty funny dude. Even though I couldn't get really any straight answers from him, I think that's part of the mystique and what he's going for in general anyways. All in all, it was a fun interview. I'm glad I could find it and finally release it for you guys. And here it is, episode 77 with Rebel Wizard. Awesome, man. Well, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. That's fucking awesome because I know you don't typically do interviews this way or anything. So, and normally I would have my co-host who is also from Australia, but he's at work right now. So yeah. I'm having to make do without him today.
That's all right. Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, this is my first one, so
hell yeah.
It's strange for me.
Well, hopefully I can make it fun. I realize I like to make it more of a conversation than like a straight interview, but I do ask questions to kind of like get it along as far as like getting things out there. But yeah, man, I'll make it fun.
Yeah, that's cool, man. No worries.
So how should I just say NKSV, like your pseudonym moniker there that you're using for Rebel Wizard?
You can just say I'm talking to Bob from Rebel Wizard.
All right. Cool. All right, man, so we're going to get started here.
Yeah, sure.
All right, listeners, so today on the podcast, I have a very special guest, Bob, not his real name, from Rebel Wizard. We're going to be talking all things Rebel Wizard here today, and maybe some things not Rebel Wizard. So... man, the kind of thing we like to start out with to get the conversation rolling here, what were your heavy metal influences? What were the first bands, those first records that you remember hearing and getting your hands on that kind of influenced you into the genre?
Well, it's the answers are relatively kind of typical and boring from my background. It's I suppose the main ones for me, seeing Kiss as a little kid, and then I suppose what the ones that were really kind of massively influential as a young kid was definitely Iron Maiden for me.
Oh
and Metallica as well. See, I was around the time, things like Ride the Lightning came out and Master of Puppets. That's when I was a kid. So, that was they were big influences on me. Megadeth as well. I mean, there was so many at the time, and it all just kind of came into my world. Like I didn't grow up in a very heavy metal crazy area. Like I was literally the only kind of kid that was into it. Mm-hmm. And along the way, I would just it was like it just came to me. I would just see it and go, what the fuck is that? That is incredible. And I would get really obsessive about it. I didn't really know anyone, and it just weird stuff like a tape would just appear at a friend's house who wasn't even into metal. Like a Maiden tape would just show up, and I'm like, dude, do you listen to this? And he's like, I don't even know what it is, and I just got it when I was in Bali or whatever, So it would just these little things would always come to me and just drop themselves along the way, and it would always just kind of it was all that kind of stuff was really inspiring. But I'd probably say, because when I think about it, my memory of growing up isn't very good. I have a terrible memory, but I can really say, that. I was pretty fortunate to be in that era, but I'd say, it was really Maiden. And I'd say Maiden as well, because I remember seeing literally 5 seconds, you could get these like metal video magazines. Yeah. And I'd get them from the video store as a kid. And, they'd have everything, they'd have all the like glam stuff on there. But then I remember once just seeing Bruce Dickinson, they showed 5 seconds of Live After Death, and I was like, fuck, that is amazing. And they were doing Running Free. So then I went out and bought the first Maiden tape because it had Running Free on it. So they obviously had Paul Diano on it. So that was and I was like, well, this is a totally different thing. So I was like discovering it all on my own, and so hearing those two versions, and then eventually getting Live After Death and things like that, and yeah, I don't know, it's all over the place, but I'd definitely be those guys.
Yeah, the one thing that's always interesting to me about Iron Maiden and a lot of bands that come from Britain in general is just like how good they all are at music, and that's not even just metal in general. Even bands like Queen and Bowie and even the Beatles, like they're all these massive successes, and I don't know what it is about England, Motorhead too.
Yeah, Judas Priest as well.
Yeah, they just know how to make good
Sabbath,
music.
I mean, it's the birthplace of metal, really. Like it's amazing, to even hear Judas Priest now, but to hear what Judas Priest was doing in the 70s is like what was happening in the 70s, early 70s in England is amazing, and the whole new age of British heavy metal era is amazing. I'm still obsessed with that now, and yeah, it is amazing. I don't know what it is. Who knows? You can't analyze it, but
yeah.
But also, I think as well, there was always such a majesty to everything that they did. Like the lyrics were always so epic, and the songwriting so epic. There was a real vision, to a lot of that stuff that came out of England and Europe as well. It kind of got a bit cheesy with the German power metal stuff, but like the English stuff was always really like, it was always just so epic, So that, I mean, as a kid, you love that sort of stuff. And Metallica were kind of like that for me in the 80s, with Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, was kind of like that, but probably a little bit more, more introspective, I suppose, in to some degree. Whereas, there's more wizards and shit coming out of England than there is in the States.
That's
which
true.
I like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always like that weird thing where America, when they kind of get a genre of music, the way they try to make it their own, and I feel like even Australia too, like everybody does a good job of like taking those roots from England and bringing it into their own kind of world and kind of turning it on its head to evolve the genre a little bit, I guess, so to speak. And it's always, I think right now too, especially with the black metal scene here in America, it's this crazy thing that's going on right now where it's got this really angular, dissonant kind of sound, but it's still just very dark like black metal, you know, like the Scandinavian stuff, but
yeah,
we're kind of making it our own. It's still got that aggression, that darkness, but it's not like all that lo-fi, you know, talking about frigid kingdoms and stuff like that. It's a lot different, but
yeah. Well, for me, to be honest, that's a little bit disappointing. See, I love the old raw black Scandinavian black metal stuff, and also, you know, Sarcophago and you know, the early Brazilian stuff. And to be honest, I'm not much of a fan of the stuff coming out of the States, of the black metal stuff. I just kind of, it's, you know, I think it's great that, you know, people are interpreting in their own way, but I miss that. You know, apart from, say, like Judas, you know, dudes like a Judas Iscariot and things like that, was great. But I miss it, to be honest. I think it's all a bit too polished for me now, and a little. But, you know, to be honest, I'm a bit old and bitter.
No, I see both sides of it, to be honest. Like there are bands, you know, that still try to capture that spirit, which is awesome when you can hear that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate, like, hearing a better production value on some of it. Not all of it, but I get the keeping the spirit of alive aspect of it. You know, that makes sense to me. That's never gonna go away.
Yeah. I don't know if you can. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really. It's wrong of me to comment on any of that, because I'm just doing my own thing. I literally don't have any involvement in anything else, so I don't really. It's kind of unfair to say, and probably what I do is, you know, I'm just being a grump about it, and. You know, I don't think you can keep the spirit alive, because for me, the world that we live in is we're in a different world now. It's a different place than when it was in the 80s or the early 90s even. It's just different. It's weird, but it's, you know, it's interesting at the same time. However, I think it'd be so fun for people to be able to really, they've got so many things to play with and sounds to work with and things that they want to do that they can really go off on, which is pretty exciting. You know, you could never do that sort of stuff, you know. Also, what is really cool is that diversity, I suppose, in something like metal, because metal is pretty homogenous and closed off in a lot of, I mean, you know, still it is within those circles, but, you know, I think there's a lot more freedom for people, I think, which is pretty cool.
Well, that's kind of what I think too, is that, you know, it always surprises me that, you know, you think every now and then the genre gets a little stale at points in time, but I'm always surprised by the amount of bands that are still trying to, like, push not maybe the genre, but their scene or whatever, or something in a different direction, or just make something that doesn't sound like something else, but still kind of capture that same essence of it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It is a fucking, you know, it's a funny thing, heavy metal, you know, it really is. You know, like I'm doing this Rebel Wizard thing, and that's purely, like, that is like a whole, that's like me, you know, that's my whole history, that's everything that I grew up on. But not only metal, I mean, I think that, like, metal, how I see it, you know, I feel like such a jerk saying all this, but you know, it was such a, you know, that put me on the path of, you know, then getting into punk, and then getting into philosophy, then getting into reading, and really being enraptured that I was an outsider, that I didn't fit in, and all that kind of cheesy stuff that you get into metal for, or whatever. So, you know, and it's come back to me, it's come to haunt me in this Rebel Wizard thing that I do, and literally it's not me trying to preserve a sound or do whatever. It's literally an expression of what I enjoy, almost at my highest musical point, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's something that you're, like, extremely passionate about, with that sound and that style of music. And
but I'm not trying to be. I'm really not.
Oh, well. So actually, it's a good thing you bring that up, because I do want to get into, like, the history of the project itself, and like you kind of starting it and how that came about, and kind of going from where it started to where it is now.
It's I don't know. I actually don't know how to answer it, because I think about it too. I'm like, why am I even doing this? Where does this even come from? And I think I've always, I picked up a guitar really young. I was probably 4 or 5. I found a guitar in my, parents' cupboard or whatever, and I was pretty obsessed with it. I'd always wanted to write music, and I'd always been writing songs, and metal songs especially, because it's so much fun to write them. I don't know, man. It's hard. I don't know. I just do it. I don't think about it. It's that point, which is a good thing about being a bit older now. You don't think about it. You just kind of. It's almost like a complete letting go of everything you're trying to do or try to be or whatever in that conceptual framework, in whatever, in whatever system, whether it's as a person or musically or whatever, and just being able to do it. And that's literally just what comes out, So I think, and when I listen to it and when I'm doing it, I'll try to analyze, where the fuck does that come from? Like that. And I guess, it's all those things that really, I suppose, hit me at various points in my life, that have the most impact, I think, are just coming out in one homogenous piece in this Rebel Wizard thing. But I've always, that's the style that I've always kind of written in as far as metal stuff. And I think as far as, I just did it, man. I've always done it. And I think as well with having, I suppose the technology now to be able to do it as well helps.
Yeah.
And also I fought against it as well. Growing up, playing guitar and being in bands and things like that. That was never a cool thing for me. That was never encouraged by anybody, And I had a big punk background as well. So when I got more involved in the punk hardcore scene in the early 90s here in Melbourne, the metal stuff is not cool. So it's not cool to do metal. It's not cool to be able to play guitar well. You've actually got to play shit. And there's a whole narrative that the medium is the message. It's not so much the music. However, the scene was really, really... it was such a nourishing place at that time, ideologically, but not so much musically and whatever. And then you find yourself, you find parts of yourself, they get shredded apart by being involved in certain scenes or whatever. So I kind of quit all that a long time ago, and I started doing the Nekrasov thing more. And from there, my conditioning is that anything that I do musically, no one's really going to be interested in it, because everything that I was into, no one was really into at the time. For example, the noise thing wasn't cool back then, and I was heavily into that. So this Rebel Wizard thing, I just literally, I think also that was probably because I was, never encouraged early on, but also being involved in scenes where things like Maiden wasn't cool. You know, you had to be into Infest and stuff like that, which I love, all of that sort of stuff. And I was, really involved in that realm for a long time, but you couldn't admit, and you'd meet those kind of dudes, and that would admit to loving, there'd be a late night thing, and someone would suddenly put on Hangar 18 or something, and be like, fuck, I haven't heard this in years, how good is this, and that sort of thing. But I think now that I haven't been involved in any scenes or anything, and I was so heavily involved as a teenager, that now, it's really good to be really free to just do whatever the hell I want. And that's literally, I think that's just what's come out, is this Rebel Wizard thing, That feels what... sorry.
The little rift that you were kind of speaking of between, the punk and metal kids, I always found that so odd, because I always feel like punk is just another extension of metal, It's still got that aggression, it's still got that, wild kind of energy to it. It's just a little bit dialed down, It's not as harsh, maybe vocally, or it's not as slick guitar playing wise. But they're cousins, They're cousins in terms of the genre.
Oh yeah, of course. I know it's ridiculous because people want that identity. They want to be, more underground, more cooler, more into this and the other. But at the same time, really, the metal scene in Australia at that point was pretty jockey, man. Pretty. It's pretty bogan and jockey and whatever. So I didn't resonate with it, at all. Mm-hmm. And so the hardcore scene for me was where I felt like I really kind of fit in, and it was a place where people were running their own labels, and you could put on shows really easily. So it was really proactive, really encouraging, sort of place, which was, good for me for a certain amount of time, not for a long time, because eventually the same thing happens within those sort of places as well. But yeah, people, they just, they like conflict. They like having like, no, that's punk is bullshit, metal solos are gay and all that sort of stuff. And it's, you'd hear all that sort of stuff growing up, and it seemed ridiculous. So, I eventually just went back to, because for me, really, all that sort of stuff was really personal. It was always I was by myself getting into it as a kid. So the more I got involved in scenes and stuff, it got a bit ridiculous. But yeah, but they're definitely related. Like, it's all related.
Yeah,
so it's kind of funny that everyone.
Yeah, I think it's too. It's like when you're younger and a kid. There's always going to be that little like divisive line between a genre, and then as you get older, you're like, oh, why did I like not listen to this at the same time I was listening to this? And you kind of get less and less, or more and more open-minded, as opposed to being like very, I hate using this word, but elitist a little bit, I guess, because when you're younger, that's kind of how you are. Like, everybody's such a little elitist when you're like 15, 16 years old. I mean, even myself, like, I was really bad about it for a long time, and then I was just like, you know what? I love music in general, so I'm just gonna listen to whatever the fuck I want to.
Yeah, that's it, man. Yeah, and embrace all of it, and that's what I think. That's how the particular Rebel Wizard sound, so that style or whatever, really came out, because it's really about just you open the hell up, and all that stuff that, because it is it is such a inspiring thing, that you just. And that's what really it is. That's what it is for me, because I'm not trying to. It's not like, it's definitely not for me. People have described it as being black metal, but it doesn't sound like black metal to me at all. Like, so.
Yes,
that's fine.
I feel like it's probably got like hints of it, especially on like the new record, but not. It's not overwhelmingly black metal. Like,
no.
There's like a little bit, and then there's like thrash, and there's like that new wave of British heavy metal sound, and just shred guitar, and I mean it's an amalgam of things, but it's so many different things that it's cohesive at the same time, at least in my opinion. So I think having all those influences that you cited, they're all kind of there if you listen to the music.
Oh yeah, they're totally yeah.
But it makes something completely different in the end product, which is still really cool. Like I was talking about earlier, like it captures that essence without sounding stale or like retreading something that's already been done.
Yeah, I think, well, that's what it does for me. Like when I'm when I'm got my headphones on, I'm just kind of doing it, and I'm just really entertaining myself, because I don't really find that in anything else now. Like I don't, and I'm sure it exists, it's not about that, but I think because I love doing it, and I've always doing music is just something I've always done since I was literally 4 years old, and I've been doing Nekrasov for such a long time now, and the Rebel Wizard stuff, as I said, I've been writing songs like that onto 4 tracks when I was 16, 17.
Wow.
Not as tight or developed, but now that's the thing, like now with having a bit of history and listening to so much, and then being able to let everything just channel itself into whatever, not caring about anything, and literally, like I said, I assume that no one would like it, because you can't do this and that and whatever, and that's all I've ever heard. That's my conditioning growing up with any musical stuff that I've done, and that goes back to the Nekrasov stuff, because I was doing the black metal noise thing back then, and people hated noise. They hated, like, and even black metal wasn't even that cool here at that time, so it was, so I just expect the opposite always. So it's bizarre that people are like, yeah, it sounds really good, I really like what you're doing, I'm like, really? I don't believe it.
I mean,
but yeah. Sorry.
No, you're all good. I mean, for me personally, like the Triumph of Gloom record that you put out last year, like for me, it just came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it was on all these websites, and people were like, "Hey, you gotta check this out." And like, I mean, it came out later in the year for sure, but I played it quite a bit, and my co-host, was like, "Hey, do you know who this guy is? Like, he's from like your area?" And he was like, "No, I've never heard of him." And I was like, well, how the fuck? You're failing me, Matt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of one of those things that just like seemingly snuck up on everybody, and it seemed to be like a little bit of a dark horse album last year, from my perspective anyways.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting for me to hear, because I have no idea. I'm in my own little bubble, man. I have no idea how it goes out there, you know. I mean, I enjoyed. I mean, that album just came together, and when it was all put together, I was like, man, I really, and when I say this, I'm saying this as another person. So when I listen to it, I'm not like, well, I can't believe I did this. I listen to it more like, this is this is kind of fun to listen to, and I enjoy listening to it. Mm-hmm. And it sounded really unique to me and weird. Like, how does this all work? And it was it was a good. For me, I enjoyed making that album, but I didn't think many people listened to it. I got some good feedback out of it, and I don't know what to say.
Has kind of like independently releasing everything been more of your MO up until recently, because the new one's about to come out on Prosthetic next month, right?
Yes, yeah. That comes back from the the early 90s punk stuff. That's just it. Everything I do is habit. It's just how I was conditioned. I don't know. See, I'm lost in this new world of social media and things like that. I don't really enjoy it. I don't really dig it, and it feels strange to me, and I think it drives people insane. And so I literally just do what I feel is comfortable, but also what I like, and what I feel is kind of missing, but I'm not necessarily doing it for for anybody else or whatever. It's more just how I do things and how I like and to do things. So all the self-releasing stuff and making your own CD, that's all I've kind of done in that way. And also because I think, say, with making the music stuff, whether it's Rebel Wizard or the Nekrasov stuff, it's I'm kind of always doing it. It's like it's not like I'm gonna be working on an album and I have to contact these people and do a build up. I'm always working on something, at that present time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm making sense about anything, but it's just how things are. And I think also with the I did so many EPs with the Rebel Wizard thing, but that was more just for me, and then sending them to friends, and going, hey, check this out, this is pretty funny.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this is really good, man. I'm like, you should send this around. Like, no one's going to be into this or whatever. And then I think I got these reviews from Triumph of Gloom or whatever. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Wow, this is really... Okay, that's kind of cool. And so I did start sending it around, and surprisingly, because I've been sending stuff to labels here and there for the last 20 years with Nekrasov and stuff, and it's predominantly gets rejected, most of the stuff, and occasionally I've worked with some good labels like Crucial Blast and things, which has been really good, and for some reason Prosthetic, they got into it, and they were like, yeah, man, we'd love to re-release this, and I didn't think that would anyone would be interested. So they've been awesome. So they're doing the one next month, and they've let me have the the edition come out on Unicorn Seaman edition vinyl and things like that. So and they just let me do whatever I want. They they're taking on Nekrasov as well, and so it's really nice to have kind of a home to do basically what I've been doing for such a long time on my own in my little edition of 10 CDs, hand drawn or whatever, to people.
That whole punk DIY thing is it's important, man, because you got to know like the ins and outs of like getting your stuff out there on your own, and then at a certain point it's like, well, why not let a label handle this a little bit, to get some extra ears on my record. And you can only do it for so long, but then again,
but I still do it, man. I still do it. I'll still make stuff. Like I just send a bunch of stuff to people, some advances of the new album, which I still do it, and I still I suppose they just they help by giving it nice additions, like getting records out and things like that. I can't afford to do it. There's no money in heavy negative wizard metal, so there should be, that should be a fucking career that you should study at school, but it's not. Now it's not, but it will be. But so they, they're good in that regard. But no, I still love, that's still important, for me. And
I mean, it's good to see a label like that kind of picking up, different kind of smaller bands or like projects like this, because not everything can be, I don't know their biggest band on there now, but like Lamb of God at one point, I guess, was on Prosthetic. Yeah. So
I know. Well, for me, it's hilarious. Like but then it makes sense, because a friend of mine mentioned it a couple of years ago. He goes, "When you should send it to Prosthetic," and I was like, I looked at their roster. I'm like, no fucking way. There's Mighty Friedman's on there.
Yeah.
There's all this, like, even Wolf from, I love Wolf. And they had something to do with that. And I was like, no way, man. That's so far. That's so far ahead of what I'd be into doing, but they were really into it. But then it made sense after talking to them and stuff. We're of that kind of same ilk in a lot of ways. So I think with that, with what is in the Rebel Wizard stuff, that resonates to them in a bit. But I really like their ethos, man, because I think a lot of the, say, cooler underground labels, that's kind of what they've become. They've just become kind of cool labels, and they're not really doing anything that interesting. They've kind of they seem to be kind of more mainstream than underground. I don't know if the underground even exists anymore, but
yeah, that's a good point.
So to some degree, it makes sense that I'm doing stuff with Prosthetic, because their roster is so weird and all over the place, but they have a genuine love for, like, helping and really helping the artist, which, who the fuck does that? No one does that. No, people who just kind of find the next cool band, next cool doom band or whatever, and just promote the fuck out of it, like, just like they would have done with, back in the 80s with some terrible glam band or whatever, and it's not, I don't know, no one's, some Prosthetic I think they take risks and stuff, whereas...
Yeah, they definitely seem to.
And I think and it's it's interesting, and they're really good. They're good to me, and let me do what I need to do, and yeah.
It seems like too, like, even the few labels that I've been in contact with or work with, as far as like doing this podcast and getting people on, they've all been like pretty open about, like, here's what we have to work with, and like, here's who we can get you and stuff like that. But then there's there's other labels where it's like they want nothing to do if you don't have like X amount of this or X amount of that. And there's other labels, and I think everybody knows about this label. Me and Matt talk shit about them all the time, but Victory Records, like, they're just so predatory with the kind of bands that they get on there, and just like constantly are ripping off bands, and it's so gross to see. It's fucking gross. Like, they're what's wrong with kind of like the metal scene in some respect. But I mean, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Can't really stop that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's gonna happen everywhere. So
yeah.
I haven't really paid attention to many labels, and I did a lot of stuff, say maybe 10 years ago, with the Nekrasov stuff, and there was so much good stuff even then. But yeah, I don't know. It's I literally, I don't pay attention. I don't understand it. I don't follow it. What I do see, most of it just kind of repulses me. And like Prosthetic, they're just they're good. They're good people. I think they're fucking with me. I think they're going to turn around and it's a joke. They're like, no, this is more of a joke, sort of thing for us, I don't know. Who knows? But so far so good.
Well, as far as like, you doing all the music yourself, was that mostly out of necessity because of how spread apart everything is in Australia and like the scene there, or was it just because that's what you wanted to do, because you wanted to make the music you wanted to make without anybody else's influence, and you had the means to do it?
I like I said, it's just what I've always done. I've always recorded stuff, and just done. And yeah, like having a band, like I've been in lots of bands, and it's just such a fucking hassle, like getting people together and then and it's harder these days. Everyone's so busy, there's stuff going on and whatever. But I don't really think about it. I just kind of do it. I don't think about it. Like I said, it's more of a habit, not a necessity. It's just and because I've always recorded, and I started out, with such shitty equipment, as a teenager and stuff. Everything was, I had samplers that would only record for 1 fucking second, and I'd try and make albums come out of that. And 4 tracks, shitty 4 tracks, and all that sort of stuff, and which people say is retro and really cool, but it's a fucking pain in the ass working with that sort of stuff. But but I have this obsessive compulsive thing where I just kind of I don't notice it, and that's all part of the making of the music, is the struggles with your equipment and getting it right and whatever. So I think because I've done, this is what I've been doing it for probably 25 years. Now it's so awesome. The software is really good, and I keep everything pretty simple and just how I can. So now there's a lot more freedom for me to focus more on the writing than fucking around with equipment and stuff, which is good. But I just kind of do it. I don't think about it being a band, and I like I really enjoy the freedom of it, and I think I'm probably a bit of a prick. I could be an asshole, in a band as well, like, no, that's not good enough or something, I don't know, or maybe I'm not, maybe I'm the opposite, where I'm too like, oh yeah, that'll do, and it's not good enough or something, and I'll just play that song, and I'll be in perpetual torment playing these boring songs or whatever. I don't know. So
I assume too, like, pretty much right after Triumph of Gloom came out, you already were like going right into this newest record, like you already had stuff ready for it, or was it kind of like a little bit of a process at least?
I know, I'm just always like, at some point, I don't know, as I said, I don't think about it, man. I just kind of I just enjoy just that's the thing that I do, like I don't do any sports, I don't really watch TV, I do watch a bit of TV or whatever, and and I read less. I used to read a lot. Now I read less. And I just put, I've had a real, I think going back to the whole, music was never encouraged thing. So in a lot of cases throughout my life, I've tried to stop doing it, because it, it's not, doesn't make me any money or anything. And it's not like, as I said, I have this weird, like, it's like a sabotaging thing it's not like a healthy thing to do, but it is a healthy thing or whatever. So I think now I just do it for what it is to me, which is probably personal and multi-dimensional as far as how to explain it. So I don't really set out to do an album. I think I did in this new one, but Triumph of Gloom just came because I like doing EPs. EPs are fun. Doing the Krasov albums are really fucking tormenting. They take a long time, and it's really harsh. It's a different thing. Whereas Rebel Wizard's, a lot more fun to do. I think, I guess to some degree, this one that's coming out next month, I did think album wise, but I hate because fucking thinking of albums is such a pressure, and that's not the point of, Rebel Wizard. The pressure's all on the Krasov stuff for me personally.
Yeah.
But the Rebel Wizard stuff shouldn't. And I felt it a little bit, and I was like, oh no, this isn't fun. But I generally just write songs, and then after a few months, you're like, oh fuck, these all go together, and that's it.
I mean, it seems like you have this drive, despite that, little thing in your head telling you that, this is not a viable thing, you're not going to make money, but it seems like you're always creative, and you're willing to like set that aside to get the music made.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a fucking nourishing thing for my being, but for my livelihood, no, it's detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, man. Everybody knows that, like, unless you're a touring band, and even if you're a touring band, like, you're still barely making ends meet, unless you're, like, top of the top. And so at some point, especially with heavy metal, you kind of have to just be like, well, am I doing this for fun? Am I doing this to make money? you know, and there's like there's a mid-level like line there too that you can do either one. But I think, you know, if you take it too seriously, when, like you said, you're just trying to have fun with like the Rebel Wizard stuff and just write it, then I think that goes a lot longer of a way in its authenticity than like worrying about like making money, I guess. Even though it's important to make money, I get that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fortunate, you know, with say having that sort of punk background, the money thing's never been a thing.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about it in that way. And you know, and yeah, it's just it's never. I mean, it's never really been a thing because I mean everything that I do is such a polarizing style. Like both things are polarizing. Like a lot of people aren't going to dig the production of it. They're not going to dig the solos in it. They're not going to dig the vocals in it. And same with the Nekrasov stuff that are, you know, noise people don't enjoy the black metal bit, or the noise people don't like the black metal bits, and vice versa and whatever. So it's never, you know, I'll never ever think there was an avenue for making squillions of dollars. But you know, you never know. You know,
True.
I could be there, you know, with married to J-Lo in a few months, you know, and she's doing some noise projects with me.
I mean, you have to take Rebel Wizard to the next step by putting backwards incantations into the records with sigils and magic spells to get all that money, and then you're good. You're good to go.
I forgot about all that stuff. I should be putting that all in.
Well, I mean, even so, with like the kind of like negative wizard, rebel metal, like all this kind of stuff you have, I guess influenced into like the, I don't want to say shtick, but like, ambiance. The word is like escaping my mind, but like,
yes,
the thing
that's
that
good. Yeah.
I'm a great interviewer, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's it. I'm an awesome interviewee, so that's fine.
Basically, like the theme of Rebel Wizard, like this whole, you know, wizard aspect and the negative metal thing, and you know all the song titles. Like, where does that inspiration come from? Because you said you read a lot, so like, is it coming from books? Is it coming from like?
I can't tell you.
Just inside your brain, like deep down.
Yeah, well, like I said, like the Rebel Wizard project thing or whatever, like it's a full embodiment, internal, external, and beyond of how I feel like I've been built up or whatever. However, I think that in this day and age, it's kind of unfair to be sort of saying what it is and what it isn't to people. I kind of don't want to tell you what it is.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, if that makes sense, because you know, because everyone's fucking rapping on about what this is and what this should be, especially now, and it's fucking horrible that there isn't, you know, that it's better to just put it out there and have things a bit cryptic, and then let it resonate inside of who you are and how you're, you know, on whatever level that's beneath the conceptual, you know, because I try to, as much as I can, work with the non-conceptual. And this is, you know, and I don't want to sound like a wanker and go on about that sort of thing too much, but that's important to me. Like, that's important to have that, you know, it is definitely, there's concept obviously in it, but can we get it where it's kind of beyond the concept a bit, you know, because everyone's fucking hammering their opinions and their ideas so hardcore now, you know, that it's so absurd, you know, and that's, there's more. Life is way more than that, you know, so I try to infuse that into the both projects. That is fundamental to both of them anyway.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of notice is like the anonymity factor is like pretty important to the overall thing, and you know, as much as I want to like get a peek behind the curtain, I don't want to like ruin that too much, especially for everybody else that would check you out, because it adds a little bit extra to the music and, you know, the whole overall theme of everything. It's like, well, who is this guy? What does he do? What does he?
And
that's
now
not
I
important.
fucked it all up by doing a podcast.
Well, it's all right. I'll just tell everybody that you cast a spell on this episode, and they all have to go buy the record now. And make you money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I'm speaking 5 different things even though at the same time. So there's subliminal message.
Shit.
I am playing an inaudible to the human ear recordings, and there's like 15 of them at the moment. So whoever's listening to it, pretty much ruined after this. But yeah, no, I think it's important because, but then you have the extremes of no interviews or whatever, which is all good. Oh, but ultimately people are just going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. So I guess a couple last things here, and we'll kind of wind down and call it done. But what is your current like gear and instruments that you have that you love to play, or like your setup, so to speak? Because I know it's like
it's so
especially
simple.
like a home kind of recording studio, it's got to be like pretty basic. But I'm interested in all that kind of stuff, so I want to hear about it.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I can probably say that, I mean, I'm not one of those gearheads, man. I like for me, having a ton of like pedals and stuff. See, this goes back to my conditioning and stuff. All those pedals and stuff were kind of like, the more pedals you had, the more embarrassing it was. Now this goes back to when maybe this is me 8 or 9 years old or whatever, and I'd go to this guitar shop every day after school and hang out there. Let me play all like the expensive guitars and that I couldn't afford, but I'd be out the back and but everything was always simple. So my that's, as I said, I just go back to how things were. So my favorite things are 80s Japanese guitars.
Ooh.
So I just have two of those, man. I have a I don't know, you say Takamon or Takamine. It's like a destroyer thing. I've had that literally. So when I did a lot of vocals in hard punk bands, and no one actually knew that I played guitar, because it was that thing going back to like, it was embarrassing. You couldn't riff. And then I think one day someone pulled out this Takamine guitar, and I was like, fuck, that's beautiful, man. And I just started playing it, and I had all these friends that I'd known for years, and they had no idea that I played guitar, and I was just playing all these riffs, and they're like, dude, you can have that guitar. I had no idea you could play. You've got to keep that guitar. And so, so this friend of mine's brother gave me this guitar, and that's a guitar I use for everything. I still use it now. It's like I've had that for 15 years, and so I got that for free. And then just recently, because I did do a live show last year, and I thought, a friend of mine convinced me to, you should buy another guitar for, if I do decide to maybe tour or play more live. And I thought that's a good idea, because I'd be devastated if this other guitar's, something happens to it. So I end up getting another like pretty much the same guitar, but it's an Aria Pro. It's another 80s metal Japanese thing.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. Digitech, keeping it 80s. I use Digitech. Like Jennifer Batten. That's my inspiration for that. And that's it. Leads. What it's all pretty 80s. 80s. Guitar Institute setup. Damasio pickups. D'Addario strings. All the classics.
I love that. Yeah, I'm a child of the 80s myself, so I love all that shit.
Yeah, so I get, I don't get into, if I went into the world of the gear world of today, I see massive pedal boards and fucking computerized, I just can't, I'm not into it, I'm more into the music itself. It's too much time. I don't have time for all that.
It does seem to take a bit of authenticity away from like the music if you have to rely on that much stuff just to get your sound across. But I also get why, it also adds something in another respect.
Oh yeah, no. And probably my aversion to it would be that I would become a fucking monster if I could find if there were things that, because I love working with sound, like that's the thing that I've always done. Nekrasov is predominantly a sound, but I like making the sound. I don't want to use too many. I think for me that's not for, I don't think other people are cheating, but for me I can't resonate or feel it as much if I'm using too many pedals, if that makes sense. I want to use less shit and get as much out of what I have,
Yeah.
Than the other way, because that for me, because that's all. I mean, I've just always not had money for equipment, or computers, and I've always had the shittest of the shit things. But it's like I'm trying to, do the best I can with what I have, and I've always been really happy with the results. Like, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. I can't believe I did, with such pieces of shit. I can, it sounds really good, and that's how you get your unique sound, I think, as well.
Yeah. Especially when you're like struggling to get pieces of equipment that like you either can't afford or can't find, which actually kind of brings up something else. Like, has there been any kind of challenges like being in Australia, like finding stuff like that? Because I know when I have to send stuff to my buddy Matt out there, like it's a pain in the ass to send stuff because it's so expensive, and you guys are like halfway around the world. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, always, man. Yeah, and it was horrible, like, because now's worse. And as a kid, like being into guitars and stuff, man, it's so expensive here. Like if you wanted to be like, Steve Vai or Al Di Meola or any of those dudes and get one of their guitars, it's like $5,000 here. Everything was so expensive. Yeah, it's always been that way here. So, it's the odds, it always felt like for me the odds were always against me, if I wanted this or that or whatever. So I literally just gave up, and everything, like I said, a guitar was given to me. So I'm like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So like I was saying before, I was literally, my path of doing all this stuff was literally just always kind of given to me. So it's kind of annoying. I wish I was more, like a plumber or something that, something a little bit more legitimate, but yeah, things just kept coming my way, in that regard. But yeah, I don't look out for it. I gave up a long time ago because, yeah, it's really frustrating. You'd find like these, I think I lied. Just recently I did see a piece of like an amp, some sort of like portable Wi-Fi amp thing, that was just a little thing because I'm, practicing the songs for possibly doing them live. And I saw this thing, thought, fuck, that would be really handy to have. Yeah, and then again, looking at the shipping, you're like, and so that'll be me for the next 10 years. I've given up on that.
So what is like your favorite track to play, or just in general off the new record?
What to play, like guitar, or just to listen to, or what do you mean?
Maybe both. Yeah, like maybe you have one that you enjoy listening to and one that you enjoy playing better.
It's fun. It's hard for me to. I've literally only started listening to the album recently because of knowing that there was going to be some, promotional things to do. I'd literally forgotten about it because I've just finished a new EP, and I'm finishing up the next Nekrasov album. So that, for me, I finished the album last year, so it's like dead to me.
Yeah, that's what I hear. A lot of people do that. When they're done with it, they're done with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I'm constantly doing new stuff. It's just because that's where I'm at. I'm at this point now. Life isn't a linear process, and life isn't composed into parts. So it's kind of, this is whatever. However, and by the end of doing it, I fucking hated the album. I was so done with it. It was fucking terrible. Everything sounded wrong. The riffs weren't working and whatever. So it was good to have a break. And now, like I just went before chatting to you, because I know I was going to talk to you, and I was just doing some mastering on the Nekrasov stuff, and I got to get back into this Rebel Wizard head. I went for a walk in the forest, and I put the album on, and I was like, actually, yeah, it's pretty good, so it's good to enjoy it again. But as far as picking a song, I don't know. My favourite song to play, probably surprisingly, is that Ease of Wretchedness and something or other off Triumph of Bloom.
Okay.
And to listen to off the new one. I can't remember the name of the song.
There's some pretty long names on the new one.
Yeah, the poor and ridiculous alchemy of Christ, Lucifer, and us all. That's probably my favorite one at the moment, because I'm a little bit proud of that guitar solo in there.
Yeah, man, I gotta say the solos fucking rip pretty hard on this record. That was like the first thing I was like, yep, this is good. I can just listen to these all day.
That means a lot to me, man. Like, and not in a because I don't consider myself. How I feel about my playing is always bad. Like, I'm a self-sabotaging sort of person. And as I said, my conditioning is always people laughing and going, "Fuck, man, you know how to play solos? You know, that's lame, you know." So it's nice to hear that. I think you're the first person that's said that.
Well, I'm glad I could be the first. I will say my favorite song, just based on the track title, is definitely "Drunk on the Wisdom of Unicorn Semen."
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with a fucked up title like that.
Well, that's an autobiographical real song. So,
I mean, is that like where do you hunt those in Australia? Are they like way out in the outback or in the capital?
Oh no, they're everywhere. They're kind of like they're a plague here. They're a problem. You know, we have to cull them. So yeah, they're just everywhere. There's nothing mystical or magical about unicorns here. Do
you guys milk them kind of like Luke Skywalker did in that new Star Wars movie? Get like blue milk, and that's the semen.
Yeah, oh no, well, I can't. You know, this is on the internet, so you can't really say anything bad on the internet. So I won't describe how we extract the unicorn semen. It's not from a normal reproductive activity anyway.
Oh man, that was like one of the greatest things I've ever gotten to talk about. So one final thing here, because you did kind of mention it earlier. Or are there any plans for live stuff? I know it's fucking hard as shit to go touring out of Australia, much less touring in Australia. So what's the tentative plan, so to speak, with that?
Well, I'm just working on it really slowly. Like, it's not a like I've got a set list. I've got to put a set together, and it's really just getting it time to go through it and practice. And I kind of, I get a bit perfection-y about it all and want it to, to all sound tight, and then also to make it kind of a good show or whatever. So I'm really, just thinking about it, and, and trying to make it, because I'll be doing it as like a one-man thing as well, because it's part of I think that's the importance of, that project anyway. And then I'm in two minds. I don't know whether people would be into that sort of thing. Like, who the fuck wants to see this dude? It's like, one dude, whatever. And I don't know. I don't really care. I'd like to tour with it and play with it. I think it'd just be fun. Just have some fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of the most important thing, is just have fun with it, enjoy it.
Yeah. We're in such a funless world at the moment that I think it's I
agree.
And in metal, that I kind of need to do Rebel Wizard to fucking stop myself from, like drinking razor blades and that sort of stuff, and just to kind of because Triumph of Gloom, man, it's that coercion. It feels like there's a real coercion of misery upon us. That's not like a cool black metal misery. It's like a really boring, annoying, conservative misery. Yeah, that's honest. That for me, I think I would love to go see a Rebel Wizard live. That's how I see it. Oh man, who is this? This is fun, because the days of yelling about the problems or whatever, or yelling about this and that, there's plenty of that, and it's awesome. There's a lot of that, and I don't disregard that at all, but it's kind of, there's no there's no Van Halen's, man. There's none of that Van Halen vibe going on. So maybe we can have a Van Halen vibe in the underground, maybe.
Yeah, it's so crazy to me, like all those days of partying that went through like their 80s and early-ish 90s are just done. Like, you don't see or hear about bands doing that anymore.
No. Not at all.
It's or if God forbid something does happen, it's all of a sudden like a crime has been committed, like. But that's a whole another thing. But yeah, it's fucking weird, man. It's the world's in a weird place. I don't know. It's like the fun got sucked out of metal.
Yeah. It is, yeah, and it really is, and I think it is on so many levels, like not just on a social or cultural level. It feels like it's fucking psychic. There's there's an epic transitory period going on now that we can all feel it on so many levels, and I think that's what drives us a bit nuts. And for me personally, because I've been involved in various scenes or whatever, and I think when you focus conceptually on a thing, like on anger or on response to that particular energy or that idea or whatever, if you know what I mean, like or onto conflict or whatever, it's limiting, for me personally anyway. So I mean, I love, I always, my favorite band of all time, one of them is Discharge. I still listen to Discharge pretty much daily and fuel that part of myself that has that anger or whatever, that teenage angst is still there or whatever. But I need something more holistic, so for me, say doing Rebel Wizard is a holistic thing where in there there's being pissed off, but there's euphoria and there's some happiness, there's some joy in there too, but there's a triumph in there. I don't know, like it's hard to explain. I can't really. It's more about I guess like you were saying before, the essence, but also not feeling coerced,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's pretty important. I think that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the magic of metal.
So much magic, so much wizards, so much semen.
Yeah, that's right. A bukkake of wizard semen upon the earth.
Oh man! All right, that's a good way to go out right there.
Let's finish on that. Yeah.
So I guess I know you said you don't like social media very much, but where can listeners kind of follow or see? We'll link all that stuff too, but just so people.
I mean, I shut it all down just recently, and that's I'm not trying to be cool, about it. I have a website. So I have a website, man. Can you believe it?
And
hey,
we do too.
So I just put a mailing list. I grabbed people. I've still I have a little mailing list of people, and I like that. So it's a way of, I guess, personal. I like having that more direct. Because I also found that I had a Facebook thing.
I was wondering about that because it disappeared, and I was like, "Oh, well, maybe like he changed it, or Prosthetic's going to take control of it, or something like that." And I was just like, "Well, whatever, it's not a big deal." But yeah, I noticed it had kind of disappeared.
I think I don't know. For me, I needed my head and my eyes out of that fucking horrible place. It really is a horrible fucking realm, and for me, I don't know. I don't, and it's just like, well, it's pretty easy to get off it. And I've done this. I do have a Twitter thing, and I'm just umming and ahhing. I don't like it. I feel weird, and that I don't want to be like a jerk about it. I'm not trying to, if anything, I'm doing the website to be more, direct to people. Yeah, because fucking people don't get Rebel Wizard shit on their Facebook feeds. No one's gonna, that's just gonna go to the wayside. So none of that was really successful for me. It wasn't how I've done things was a lot easier the other way. And but Bandcamp was really good. People the music's there, people can follow, so if there's a new release, that just pops up, and so I think they can do that.
It up.
Bandcamp, or just go to the website. Sounds so 90s, doesn't it? Go to my website.
No, that I think that makes a lot of sense. I think people are trying to get away from social media in some respects. So I think having a website, I've noticed a lot of bands putting websites back up, which is smart, I think. So I don't know. I think you're making the right move.
I like it because I hate the look of Facebook. It's such an obnoxious platform. Yeah, and more and more it became so constrained. The algorithms were more about serving the worst kinds of people on the planet. Not about, your music or what your podcast or this person, or not about anybody, but really just making money. That's fucking all it is. So at least, and as I say, I think about it from if I was a Rebel Wizard fan or whatever, I'd want that dude to say, hey, come over here to my website. Fuck those guys, come over here. I'd prefer that, so that's why I'd do it that way.
Smart. I'm with you on it, man. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. I really do appreciate it, because I know, like I said earlier, you don't do a lot of these, but I had fun. I think this is going to be a good podcast. Hopefully people will check out the records for sure.
That's cool, man. No, thanks for having me. It's really weird to have to talk about it or whatever. And
it's kind of funny because what I usually do when I try to get people on is like I will go to their Facebooks or whatever website they have to try and like get in contact with them and be like, hey, I do this thing, you want to come on? And right before I knew the new record was going to come out, I was about to reach out to you, and then Prosthetic hit me up, and I was like, oh shit, like this is such weird timing. So it just all kind of worked out that way, and it's like, fuck
it's weird, man. It worked that way for me and Prosthetic as well. I literally I've already fucking gone on I keep rambling, but
it's all good.
There's been a lot of weird synchronicity, and that you go by that, it's just, and that's one of the reasons why I wasn't sure about doing a podcast, whatever, but it's kind of like you sometimes, I have the belief, and this is another topic I could go on about, that we are being lived. You just gotta, and there are obvious things that will come in that you just go, okay, yeah, cool, there you go. So that's good, man. And we had a good chat. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, dude, this was fun. Like some of them, the weird thing about doing this podcast is like some of them tend to be a little interviewing, and that's fine. I don't mind that. But I love the ones where like you can really kind of go off on these like tangents and get into like little conversations and make it more of a natural kind of thing instead of just like, well, when you did this thing on this record, like what were you thinking about? I don't. It's not interesting to me. So
no, I get worried because when I get asked a question, about 1,000 different answers come into my head, and I have to try and filter that. And then I have an issue with I don't like giving too much information, and then I have a problem with I don't even believe in concepts anymore, And then I have all these so while I'm talking to you, I'm having all these philosophical debates inside my head, and so I'm hoping it's all coming out okay and. People go, this guy's, what the fuck what's going on?
Well, last question. I need your name, your address, your social security number. I don't know if Australians have.
Oh yeah, easy. Yeah, sure. Do you want I can give you my passport.
Oh yeah, passport. Yeah, I'll need all that.
Anything else? Yeah.
No, I think that's it.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
All right, man. All right, cool. So
be excellent to each other. And party on!